Station, guys.
All right. Thanks, Chris. My name is Patrick Hayes. I'm the director of Influential You. I'll be your moderator for this session. Like Chris mentioned, joining us today, Brendan Kaminsky, the founder of bknown Agency, also a North Carolina alum. He just launched bknown Agency this year. So Brendan, congrats on that. Austin is the co-founder of the Players Trunk and also a Mission alum. Josh Spiegelman is the managing director and managing partner at Mindshare and is a Boston University alum. And Buddy Boeheim is a member of the Syracuse men's basketball team. Welcome, fellas. Let's jump right into it. Today, we're joined by a lot of experienced professionals giving their take and views in all things name, image, and likeness. I think the fun part is going to be hearing from the different perspectives, experiences, views, and so on and so forth about NIL. So let's get right to it. We are 2 months into this new territory of compensating athletes for their name, image, and likeness. I'd like to start off by asking what your initial thoughts are. So Buddy, as a student athlete, I'll start with you. What initial thoughts, experiences, personal insights that you personally gone through?
Yeah, just coming into this, it was a roller coaster. Not sure. I've never been, familiar with this. Never been able to do much at all. Whether it was get a meal, have someone pay for a meal, whatever it may be. So just jumping right into things. It was a full 180, and just right away wanted to take a step back the first couple of days, look at my options, and kind of talk over with my parents, because that's really the only people that I had in my corner at the moment with talking about good deals and people I'm familiar with. The Players Trunk was one right away, knowing Austin's brother Hunter really well, who was a manager at Syracuse. So that was something I wanted to do first and foremost. And then from there, just talking to people I'm familiar with, getting ideas from them, and also having a good friend who works at Rock Nation, Jack Overdyke, helped me out with things, and we've been working together the last month or so. So just getting good connections early on, and making sure I'm doing things with companies and people I know well, and that they have a good message going out.
Totally. Is this something that you prepared for a while?
Not really. Probably like a week before, my dad told me that I was probably going to pass, and just doing basic things first, like Cameo and stuff like that, and then going forward, seeing what companies would reach out, trying to sift through my DMs and find good companies that had good ideas, and kind of let my mom handle it from there. She's really good at taking those deals and talking to people. So just figuring out through her, and kind of having fun with it, not stressing too much, and making sure I'm still focused on basketball always.
Yeah, totally. Well, it's all new to everyone, so it's not a sprint, it's a marathon here. So it sounds like they've got support for you. That's awesome. Parlaying into that, Austin, I know you're working with Buddy. What are your initial thoughts on just taking advantage of everything NIL right now?
For sure. I think first, it's long overdue. I was fortunate enough to be a student manager at Michigan, and I got to work with student athletes up close. You see the amount of time, energy, and effort that goes into it. So it's great that they're finally able to be compensated. And it was super awesome to help Buddy become the first college athlete to use school marks in an NIL deal. So I think that really set the stage for us. We always wanted to put the power back in the athletes' hands. So we're trying to do that, each and every day, just helping athletes finally earn the compensation that they deserve.
Totally. I'm going to circle back on your guys' partnership and get a little bit more into detail later. Josh, I'd love to hear your thoughts.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, first off, thanks for having me, and excited to join this esteemed panel. And Buddy, congrats on all your success at Cuse. So yeah, I think you can't overstate enough the significance of NIL in July 1st, when it was signed into law in many states, and then available nationally, both from a college sports perspective, a sports perspective, but also from a cultural standpoint. Like, as Austin said, this is long overdue. And the fact that hundreds of thousands of student athletes now have the ability, for the first time in history, to profit off of their name, image, likeness, it's so important. And I think we've only scratched the surface in the marketing industry so far. In the last few months, there's been some incredible partnerships, but I think we're really just starting to see the tip of the iceberg in terms of what can be accomplished. I'm also been really encouraged to see a lot of marketers taking a very purpose-driven approach in terms of helping student athletes and helping their communities. And so that's something that I've really enjoyed being a part of, working with brands navigate the space in a really deliberate, meaningful way.
Do you think those conversations that you've had are been more in the positive or more in like the uncertainty? Are we going to jump into this right now, or like really excitement? Let's really dive into this.
Yeah, so it's definitely a mixed bag. You have some marketers that are uncertain, and we have some brands that we've worked with that knew 6 months ago that they wanted to be one of the first brands in the history of our country to sign a NIL deal. And, we worked with them to make sure that we are choreographing a strategy and navigating the space so that they were prepared on when the clock struck midnight on July 1st to build to action deals. But for the most part, we've seen a lot of excitement from our clients, given it's an entirely new entry point that they can leverage to drive their objectives.
Totally. And all of that excitement comes, and we've had a couple games so far last weekend, with the majority starting up this weekend. So I think a lot's going to get going, and a lot of questions might be answered. I think maybe we'll even see a little bit of uncertainty, after a big play happens or a big game by someone. Brendan, love to hear your thoughts too.
Yeah, it's been really exciting to just watch it and grow in real time. I think when the first, in the first few weeks, probably had like 10 to 15 different people, friends or professional contacts, just be like, hey, like, what are you doing with NIL? How are you getting involved? And, I think people are trying to wrap their head around it, but it's all positive, and it's great to see people like Buddy really taking advantage of it. For myself, the way I've been involved is, direct with athletes, educating schools or conferences. And, for me, to the question of, have you prepared for this for a while? Like Buddy said, like for me, I was like, well, kind of, I've been certainly helping people build their brand through social, and that's such a big part of this. And just to, but it was one of those things where it's like, when it hit, everyone's like, oh, wow, this is a thing. And certainly there's been amazing companies, influencers, one that comes to mind, and I know Jim, the CEO, is speaking soon, that have been preparing this for years, that are probably thinking to themselves, oh, all these people are trying to get involved. Like, we have this whole infrastructure, we have a system in place, and those are the people that are winning. And as time goes on, those are the people I think that are best positioned. But it's been really exciting, and I think it's the wild, wild west. Some good, some bad, but it's all positive and been exciting to, like I said, watch in real time.
Yeah. So in your conversations with different student athletes, conferences, teams like that, do you see a pattern? Do you see any differences amongst, one conference to another, one sport to another?
Yeah, I mean, one thing that I tell athletes, and I think is a mistake that athletes make, is treating their social, treating their brand as like, I'm going to post stuff, on the court, on the field, whatever, and not really show personality outside of that, right? And so I try to tell people, show your relatability, right? If Buddy has, certain hobbies he likes, if he's really into fishing, like, show that, because brands right now more than ever are trying to get involved, whether it's a PR story or to really attach themselves to NIL. So I think that's one thing I see a lot. And, I think that it's a lot of folks, like, talking to some kids directly, I feel like they've been like, oh, it's here, but I don't know what this means. Like, we have a deal with this company, but I still don't have anyone guiding me. So I think there's just so much education that needs to be done. And that's really where I try to play a role. And people like me and, people on this panel, like, it's just a matter of guiding folks in the right direction and, taking advantage of it. But, that could happen in so many different areas.
Totally. Buddy, Austin, like I mentioned, circling back on your guys' partnership, maybe Austin, I'll start with you. Why Buddy? The direction that you guys have gone, why has this been a success, and where do you want to take this partnership?
For sure. I think Buddy's the exact student athlete that we want to work with. Like he mentioned, he has a pretty close relationship with my brother, who's also a co-founder. He was a student manager at Syracuse. So he kept in touch with him, loved the company, what we were doing with former college athletes with selling the gear. And it was just a natural transition for us to help them create their own customized merchandise. And we were able to secure the licensing deal with Syracuse, which is a pretty big deal just to be able to use the school marks in a design. And Buddy has a great nickname with the Buddy Bucket. So just putting the two together, it was awesome. The traction has been terrific. And like I said, it's been a pleasure to work with Buddy.
Yeah, that S is iconic in the school, obviously very well known. Buddy, what are your thoughts on the partnership so far, and maybe enlighten some of those who don't know the capacity of it, where they can find some of your merchandise and other things that might be available through the Player's Trunk?
Yeah, it's been great so far. When it first dropped, it really blew up, and I didn't think it would get all the attention it's gotten, but it's honestly been really cool, and to be able to be the first player to have the S logo, the school logo on merchandise was really cool, and we wanted to get that done right away so we could get that out there, and it's just been awesome. A lot of my friends, people I know, hitting me up trying to get shirts and that, and if you just go to Player's Trunk on Instagram, whatever it is online, you can find their link, and it's in my bio too. So I try to help my friends out when they ask how to get it, but it's been a lot of fun, and hopefully we'll just keep doing stuff as the season goes along. After a game or after a big win, we can figure stuff out and just keep bouncing ideas off each other. But they've done a great job so far, and it's been really fun working with them. I'm having a blast, and it's people I know, it's family, and it's been a lot of fun seeing us both work together and do a good job doing it.
That's amazing. Now I know it's the off season for you. Do you think that things will change as far as different partnerships and posting more throughout the season, or do you think it'll be more heavily focused off the season and then allowing your fans to maybe say, hey, I'm pretty focused on basketball? Or what's that balance like? Should you partner with other brands during the season?
Yeah, in terms of, I'd say public appearances will definitely probably go down. I'm going to do one this weekend here, a local signing, but once the season starts, I'm definitely going to want to be more focused, but I can always upload an Instagram post or a tweet or do something like that in some sort of manner, but I'm going to be focused on the season, and that's always the most important thing, always will be, but I'll still be open to doing stuff. Obviously, the season is when I figured a lot of companies will want to do stuff, because that's when our name's being on TV or games and you're on ESPN, whatever it may be. So that's when the recognition is there. So I'll be open to that. I understand that, but I'm also going to make sure I'm not doing too much, because it's a long season. There's a lot of games to be played, and just do it the best way, the way that I think is most effective, and always keeping my options open.
Love that. Josh, kind of parlaying off of that partnership,
Yeah.
have you seen any trends so far, maybe some that are doing it in a great way, some that you maybe would critique and say, hey, I would have done it a different way?
Yeah, I don't, before I answer that, I actually want to riff off something Buddy just said, which is like being very judicious with his time. And so I think one thing that's really important for brands to think about when they're working with student athletes is how much they're asking of them, because many brands are used to working with professional athletes that have, and many of them are surrounded by full teams that can take on burden a lot of the responsibilities. And even in that case, sometimes it's hard to get professional athletes to deliver on contractual obligations in a timely manner. And so you think about student athletes, and as Buddy said, you're balancing academics, you're balancing all of your responsibilities for your team as well. And so for brands, what I found is it's really important to streamline the asks for student athletes to ensure that you're setting them up for success as well as the brand up for success. And so it's definitely, different. And you think about you're talking about 18, 19, 20-year-old kids, they're balancing a lot. And I know when I was 18, 19, 20, I certainly wasn't balancing as much as they already are. So I think that's something that we found is just an adjustment with brands, just being a bit more thoughtful around how you streamline the ask for student athletes. In terms of your other question around, how brands are, approaching the space, again, I've seen the brands that I've seen doing it the best, again, have been really leaning into purpose-driven inspirational stories. One of the best examples that I've seen is a smaller brand called Built Protein Bars. They partnered, they're already a partner of BYU, and they awarded every single walk-on on the team with free tuition. And it was the way that they did it, the way the owner did it, really pulled at your heartstrings. They actually orchestrated it. I would encourage everyone to check it out on YouTube, where they called up every walk-on one by one, and then eventually call up all 36 walk-ons. And for a small brand, it generated so much national press. They got picked up on USA Today, on ESPN, a number of different press outlets. And it was really because they were giving back to these student athletes that work so hard on the field, these walk-ons, and they had to take on additional jobs that they really didn't have time for. So that's one of the better examples. You know, I haven't seen a lot of brands go awry at this point. I've been more focused on the good ones.
Right. Yeah, the Built and you know, what they did with the walk-ons might be a little different than we, you know, see posted on Instagram with the brands or whatnot. Do you think that there's going to be more creativity, maybe to get a little bit more of that PR push for some of these brands?
Absolutely. Absolutely. I think there's a lot of creative ways that brands can intersect the space that will generate PR. But again, you want to appeal to what fans want to see. Like they want to see brands help out student athletes in meaningful ways. Like, you know, logo slaps are fine, but you know, a story like Built that really appeals to your visceral feelings, I think is going to be the more powerful place.
Right. Brendan, you know, we've seen brands want to take on this space, and I think, you know, for you and your team, what advice would you give to like help build their personal brand more? I think, well, the athletic departments do such a great job in getting content to the players, you know, from practices in the locker room to the games, but then it's also on the student athletes to take their own images, build up their own brand, show up their own activities and interests. So as you know, student athletes are a little bit newer to this game. Maybe they do have friends who are professional athletes now, but what's the best advice? What can they take away from all of this as far as like, hey, you know, if I push out and continue with building my brand, there might be more opportunities to come?
Yeah. So a few things come to mind. I mean, the first thing is consistency. And I think that, you know, a lot of athletes, especially student athletes, you know, have a ton of things going on, like Josh just was talking about, but consistency is really important in this space. And, you know, that's one thing that I try to impress upon folks, and that we try to impress upon folks, any client, frankly, with the social media. And, you know, another thing that comes to mind, like I said, is the relatability and, you know, making sure that you are connecting to your fans and that they see you as like, you know, you're a human being too, right? Like you're not always just on the court shooting baskets. You have hobbies and interests, and that's really the most successful people on the internet are the people that have grown to be very relatable. And the other thing, I mean, there's a bunch of different things and best practices, but it's important to know like what the platforms want. And we don't have to get in the weeds in that, but you know, Instagram wants a certain thing from you. You know, they have certain algorithms, Facebook as well. They're paying creators. You know, Facebook just pledged $1 billion in 2022 to pay to creators. And I know they're currently, you know, potentially looking at that on the college front. But if you do what the platforms want you to do and lay out things to do, you'll be successful. And all these, you know, platforms have created guides. You know, Facebook just made a huge webinar for people to watch with 5 to 6 different classes on this is how to use Facebook, and this is, you know, how you can, you know, do sponsored posts and brand content and things like that. And the last thing I'll say is I've encouraged folks, and I think it's important, like if you have certain hobbies, like reach out to the brand manager from that company, right? Like I spoke to a couple athletes after a conference recently, and they were like, yeah, I really like this clothing brand, you know, and I'm trying to figure out what to do. And it's like, just go on LinkedIn, find the brand manager and reach out. And I was like, I'm pretty sure whoever that brand manager is will feel like this is awesome. Wow, like NIL just started. This college athlete is into my brand. And because like we're talking about PR, working about making a buzz, like they probably are more likely than not to at least do something or give you the time of day. So because everyone's accessible and because like you are that business now as a college athlete, it's just use your social for the quality over quantity and use it for outreach.
Right. And you think that more student athletes right now are being proactive by themselves, without using representation to reach out to these different brands that they have an affinity?
Probably not. I think probably not. I think most people look at social as, okay, what should I put on my feed? What are the things I should be doing? If I'm doing a deal, I'll do a swipe up, I'll tag a brand. I think that, and I don't think this is just a college athlete. I think people in general don't think about, oh, I want to, like, if I'm talking to like someone younger who's trying to get into sports, it's like, oh, I'm interested in working at the NFL. Like, well, did you reach out to the person on LinkedIn who works at the NFL that does the exact thing that you want to do? Because, eventually someone will respond and they'll look at it. So I think that's a huge opportunity for folks. And, I'm sure folks do slide into DMs, but maybe not as much thinking professionally or replying on a personal level. And that'll be huge for them.
Totally. Buddy, going back to you, you're in this every single day. You're in the locker room with your teammates. What's the conversation like? Do you come back and say, hey, I have this opportunity here. Should I take it? Is there a conversation amongst all of you?
I wouldn't say so much in that sense. Some of us have to mind that we have five or 4 or 5 teammates that are international, so they can't make money yet. So that's kind of a tough conversation to have. But we all support each other. If they see one of us do a deal or something, we all ask how it's going and keep tabs on that. But I think the biggest thing we talk about as a team is trying to get together a team camp so everyone can make a share of money, and even guys like the walk-ons or even managers, just trying to make sure everyone gets involved in this, because obviously some guys aren't going to get as much attention as others. So I think that's the biggest thing we've talked about as a team a couple of times. We had Jim from Influencer come up this past week and talk to us about building our brand and doing stuff that will help us. So he kind of challenged us and just gave us really good insight. He's one of the best at it. So it was really cool having him up here and just kind of just talking about different ways we can help each other out and ways. And if one of us, like I connected with Players Trunk early, having a guy like Benny Williams or someone else ask me, if they should do it too. And, obviously I say yes. So just giving each other advice, and if someone's worked with a past partner, just giving them details on how it goes and how it went.
Yeah. Going back to Jim, I know that there's a lot of, industry leading professionals that are going out and speaking to different student athletes teams, even coaches there. What's the take from all of your coaches, the support? Is this like a, guys, remember we have to do X, Y, and Z, don't do this? Is it a constant reminder?
Yeah, I think they've if anything, it's been more hands off, and over the summer we were practicing every day, so we were focused on that. But it hasn't been so much you can't do this or make sure you're getting in the gym still. It's kind of just giving us freedom and helping us out here and there. If one of the coaches knows someone, kind of getting them in touch with us and trying to give us opportunities, and like the Players Trunk and stuff like that, and just also trying to set up a team camp they think is probably the best way for everyone to benefit. So they've been really helpful and haven't really been too concerned about us not focusing on basketball still. So it's been great. And I mean, Syracuse has such a big fan base that once the season comes, everyone will start getting more attention. Even that we have 4 transfers, so that will help them if the fans aren't so familiar with them yet. So they understand that, and once the season hits, we all feel like we won't be too worried about it, but there will be opportunities.
Yeah, that's great. Austin, circling back to you, obviously we touched on your partnership with Buddy in Syracuse. I know you have some other schools. Maybe highlight some of those other schools, and the licensing part of it is something that we haven't seen a whole lot of to this point. But can you go dive into some of those details on maybe some of the challenges, why certain schools, and where else are you going to take this?
For sure. So the next school that we'll be doing the licensing deal with is LSU. So Syracuse was one that wanted to be ahead of the game with the NIL space, and LSU pretty similar. But the biggest challenge is just that it's so different school by school and even state by state, where you have some states where you can't even use the school marks. Like, it's really not up to the schools. And then there are some where even if we want to do a t-shirt or hoodie design, you can't even put the athlete in the same team colors. So I think that's the biggest challenge for us, is that there's not this one uniform ruling, which hopefully there will be more clarity sooner rather than later. But, we're still trying to navigate the space each and every day. And I think that the licensing deals are a huge part in it. It just takes the designs up to another level. And I think the fans really like it as well.
Yeah, no doubt. Per rules, you can only work with Buddy up until, his collegiate career is done. What are thoughts for, those type of partnerships, but then trying to figure out how to extend it later on?
For sure. So I think when we started it, we always wanted to do the long-term partnerships. We wanted to be collaborative. We want to grow with the athlete. We want the athlete to grow with us. We're a pretty young company, only 13 months in here, but we have worked with numerous athletes who have gone from the college ranks to the professional ranks. And I think one of the great ideas is just even some like charity auctions. So when you sign that first professional deal, maybe selling some of your gear for, a few $1,000s may not make such a huge impact, but a lot of these athletes have their own foundations. So partnering up in that sense, I think, is how we're looking at the professional model.
Got it. Josh, coming back to you, are there going to be any advantages of working with student athletes over professional athletes now?
Yeah, it's a great question. So again, I don't think one can overstate enough the affinity and the passion that college sports fans have for the student athletes in their communities and in their states. So while professional athletes certainly have a tremendous amount of scale and reach, and there's certainly always going to be a place for working with professional athletes, student athletes engender so much love within their communities that there's an opportunity for brands to harness that love to deliver on their objectives and choreograph a number of different student athlete deals across different priority regions and markets, where each deal in partnership in of itself may not have the same reach as professional athletes, but collectively they do, and you're going a lot deeper in those communities. There's certainly roles for working with the most preeminent student athletes in the country that are visible and recognizable, but the reality is that is a small percentage. So I think that there's absolutely a role to really unlock that brand love. And then also, if you think about the advantages for marketers that are really invested in the college sports space, one of the challenges that I've dealt with for years is up to this point, we could never feature student athletes in our creative. So if we wanted to run in live games, we had to work with former student athletes who are, in some cases, haven't been in college for years. And so from a contextual relevancy perspective, for brands that can now, if I'm advertising during a Cuse game and I have the opportunity to feature Buddy in my commercial, like that's going to drive a lot more relevance for my consumers, which I think there's a big advantage to.
And you think with these smaller communities, I mean, a lot of these different universities are in those communities, they're not in the top big cities. Will we see more of those local brands take advantage of this? Or do you think that there'll be a good balance of the local versus also the national brands too?
Yeah, I think it's a great question. I think we're going to see balance. I think you're going to see certainly roles for the local car dealerships who are looking to drive foot traffic to their locations and appearances and signing autographs and such. But I think you're also going to see more and more national advertisers as we get into tentpole events. As I think someone said, the season's just kicking off. So for college football, so you're going to see more and more action as we culminate towards a CFP, and then once college basketball and other sports really get into gear for the fall season, I think we're going to see more and more national advertisers looking at the space and looking to make moves.
I agree. You know, Brendan, going back to that point, we've only seen a handful of games. We got a majority start in here tonight and then through the weekend. What gray areas have we seen, and are those gray areas going to be answered the weekend after, or is this going to be a pretty long duration on finding and learning these different topics?
Yeah, I'm also curious to see when we find out. It feels like it's going to linger for a bit. It feels like this gray area is and a lot of that's maybe for the best, or at least it means that there's a lot more deals that can be done, for an athlete. I think what I'm curious about on the gray area and on like what happens once the school season starts is, are players going to be a lot more, they're going to be a lot more locked in. Like, for instance, I've been working with some, college football players. Season's about to start this weekend. Are the coaches going to, make them feel a certain way if they're doing all these deals? There's a bunch of PR stories around them. And does that affect the locker room, or does I'm always a proponent, and I hate when people are like, oh, like this person is tweeting all the time, and because of that, it's affecting their performance. Like, people have 24 hours in a day. They're playing, they're practicing, they're dieting and all those things, but like there's plenty of time to build your personal brand. So I think that there's plenty of time. But yeah, I would be curious, because I've seen, and I know Dabo's been in the news, and like I think he said he wasn't a fan of, turning college sports into, professional, with all the players. I don't know what he recently said, if he's backtracked, but like, if I'm a Clemson player, am I skeptical? Because I think the coach is going to feel a certain way. So those are some of the things that I'm thinking about. But certainly, I think the gray area is going to go on for a while. I also just one thing that, Josh was saying, and when you asked about dealing with college athletes versus professional athletes and the advantages, when I have conversations with brands sometimes, like lately, it's like they're looking for micro influencers. Micro influencers have a community that's very special. They have a lot of engagement. So sometimes brands might be like, we want to get 10 micro influencers, then 1 or 2 big ones. And that bodes well for a lot of these student athletes. And now it's just a different bucket of people that companies can look to. So I think that part is really exciting. And it just goes down to quality versus quantity, and making sure that you have that community. So I think there are going to be instances where it's like, you know what? We'd rather go to this person who has a huge loyal following in this city that we're looking for, rather than just cast a wide range for a big influencer, even if they have a much bigger following.
Mm-hmm. No, I agree. NIL in general, like, how big of a deal is this? Like, is this a massive thing? Are people looking at this the right way? Is there just too much uncertainty really to realize like that this is an actual thing now? We've seen the NCAA video games getting taken away and my nights being ruined, so how does this play in effect?
Yeah, I just think it's a huge deal. And I think it's one of those stories that hits beyond like the traditional sports fan, where it reaches like the news outlet and then people who, know people in sports, like, hey, this college thing, like, how are you getting involved in that?
Absolutely.
Eric, by the way, Eric, with some clarification against colleges paying. Thank you for that clarification, Eric. I appreciate that. Wasn't sure exactly what Dabo was saying. But yeah, I think with the gray area, another thing on the gray area, Patrick, is like, and I'd love to know the answer if someone does. Like, I know when Barstool has now, gotten a bunch of players and they've been signing, it's been unclear to me, is that allowed because they're a sports book or they have this sports book? Some folks have told me it is, some it isn't. That's one of those things where I'd love to know, similar to you, like if that is solved. And if someone knows the answer, whether it's on this panel or in the chat, would love to, because I feel like there's so many of those that it's just like nobody knows.
Right. We had a question come in here. Some are saying that this will make colleges the professional level. How do you view this statement? Open to anybody.
I disagree. Personally, I disagree with the sentiment that all of a sudden college sports is going to be analogous to professional sports. The reality is, the percentage of athletes that are going to accumulate a lot of wealth, which is well deserved, through NIL deals is very, very small. You're talking about, I think there's 460,000 student athletes out there, across men's, women's, different divisions and sports. And so, as Buddy was saying, like, there is now an opportunity and a role for every single person on the team, every single person on the roster, to make money, and money that they deserve, entitled to make. And so all of a sudden, do I think that people have said like it's going to lose its luster and innocence because student athletes are making money? I believe that's an overstated opinion, but that's my personal take.
Buddy, going back to you, we've got about 5 minutes left here. Kind of the recruiting aspect of it. You went through your own recruiting process and talking to different schools and wound up, at Syracuse. How do you think this is really going to affect, when coaches go and sit in the living rooms and talk to the parents and the kids? Hey, this is an opportunity now. You're going to get a great education. We're going to, be leaders on and off the court. But now here's an opportunity to really take your brand to the next level and prepare for the pro level.
Yeah, I already see it happening. The other day I saw our GA filling out like a PowerPoint of things we've already done, kind of promoting what we've done and showing what we can do through NIL at Syracuse. And I think it will be big. I think especially at Syracuse, like I said, it's such a big fan base that it's really just Syracuse basketball and Syracuse sports are the only thing within probably an hour or two. And then you go to Buffalo with the Bills and New York City, but there's not much else around it. So people are all in on Syracuse sports, and I think it will benefit us a lot and help us a lot. But it's also a great way to interact with fans. Something I love doing is always trying to take pictures or whatever it is and interact with our fans. And you can tell right away when there's 30,000 people at a game, and there's nothing like Syracuse. So I think it will be great for us, especially, and other schools will definitely try to sell their NILs benefits to recruits, and it will definitely be a major factor going forward because you see guys leaving early for the G League, and clearly money has become a factor for where recruits go next. So I think it will be one of the most important things for recruiting going forward.
Yep. I love that. We have a specific question in here, maybe for Austin, Josh, or Brendan. What do you think of the potential of NFTs in the factor in NIL?
I'll just say there's been one, I know, Kayvon Thibodeau from Oregon did an NFT that was with Phil Knight and Tinker Hatfield, who designed the Jordans. I think schools are going to start supporting, and that was, I think Nike supported that one. But I think that there's a huge opportunity for NFTs. I personally think with a student athlete, the best way to do an NFT is to create tangible benefits, right? So like for Buddy, if he does an NFT, if you get this NFT, you get access to merchandise or meet and greets and, physical things. One of the things to figure out, like best case would be like, hey, if you get this NFT, if you could figure this part out, if you get this NFT, you get 1 ticket to every game for the season or 2 tickets to every game for the season, right? Like that'd be super cool. I think you'd have to figure out how to vet those people to make sure they're not lunatics or that, they're okay and it's all safe. But I feel like the NFT potential is huge for that. And that goes for anyone, any creator, any athlete, but definitely on the college side. I feel like that would be a good PR story if you could get all this unique access through the NFTs. And I know Kayvon is one that I saw, and I'm sure there's been a lot of others.
Awesome. Yeah. As NFT. Oh, sorry to cut you off, Josh.
No, I was going to say, I know that it was believed One Team Partners brokered a licensing deal with Panini trading cards. And so that seems like an organic space where it could easily translate to NFTs from a trading card perspective. So that's one very, low hanging fruit where I can see it taking shape.
Yeah. And Austin, has that been a part of any vision, looking ahead, or any conversations with any of the compliance departments that you've spoken to?
I think it's something we're definitely thinking about. We haven't done it so far. We talked about it with a few guys that were in the draft, the NBA draft this past year. We didn't end up doing it, but I definitely think, NFTs are here to stay. I think Bryce Young, the Alabama quarterback, I think he just designed his own NFT. I haven't seen what you get if you do get the NFT, like if there is any tangible items, but I do think, tons and tons of college athletes are going to start doing it.
Amazing. Well, guys, we are out of time. Buddy, Austin, Josh, Brendan, thank you so much for coming on, sharing your knowledge. I know I learned a lot. I hope all of you did as well. Thanks for all the questions, and looking forward to the other panelists coming up.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you. Thanks for having us.
Hey guys. All right, so I'm back. Well, we actually have a little bit of a delay. Jim Cavale is running a few minutes late. I was going to try to keep everybody on, but all disappeared, unfortunately. Let's go ahead and bring my brother, Ryan Dietert, on, and